Find the value of r so the line that passes through each pair of points has the given slope. Number 10. Notice, we're not looking for the slope this time. We're given the slope, and we're looking for one of the coordinates. So we'll still use the slope formula, except now we'll be substituting in a number for the slope, and we'll be looking for either an x or a y. So let's substitute. M is 1, y2 is -2, minus y1 is 8, over x2 is r, minus x1 is 6. And we'll solve this for r. Simplify it a little bit. -2 minus 8 is -10. And now let's put the slope over 1 to make it a fraction, and we can cross multiply. Whenever one fraction equals another fraction, remember, you can just cross multiply. We'll do 1 times r minus 6 equals 1 times -10. So there's 1 times r minus 6. Notice r minus 6 is in parentheses because it's 1 times the whole thing, equals 1 times -10. Well, 1 times r minus 6 is just r minus 6, and 1 times -10 is -10. If you add 6 to both sides, that cancels out the 6 on the left, and -10 plus 6 is -4. So substitute the values in and solve for the r. Number 11. Do the same thing. Let's substitute the values in and solve. M is 3/4 equals y2 is r minus y1 is -3 over x2 is 7 minus x1 is -1. So get the values substituted in and then solve for r. You can simplify a little bit first. R minus -3 is really r plus 3. 7 minus -1 is 7 plus 1, which is 8. And now cross multiply. It'll be 4 times r plus 3 equals 3 times 8. So for parentheses r plus 3, remember to put the r plus 3 in parentheses because it's 4 times the whole thing, equals 3 times 8. Instead of distributing, I'm going to leave the 4 out there, and I'll just divide by it here in just a minute. But first, 3 times 8 is 24. Instead of distributing, because I know I'll just have to come right back and divide by that 4 again later, I'll just divide by the 4 now. So we'll divide both sides by that 4. 4 divided by 4 cancels on the left, leaving r plus 3. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. Now subtract that 3 since it's being added, and r is 3. So remember, substitute in and cross multiply and solve. You could have done the distributive property and worked it out in the end like a 2-step equation, but it saves you a step if you go ahead and divide there early. Number 12. Let's use the slope formula and substitute our values in and solve for r. M is -3 equals y2 is -4 minus y1 is 8 all over x2 is r minus x1 is 2. So get your values substituted in, and now we'll solve for r. Simplify the -4 minus 8 and make it a -12. And let's get fractions. -3 is really -3 over 1, and now I can cross multiply. -3 times r minus 2 will equal 1 times -12. Remember to put the r minus 2 in parentheses. One times negative 12 is negative 12. And I'm going to do what I did the last time, and instead of doing the distributive property, I'll go ahead and just divide both sides by the negative 3 now. Since it's negative 3 times the whole piece where the r is, let's divide both sides by the negative 3. They cancel on the left, leaving r minus 2. And negative 12 divided by negative 3 is 4. Now you've got r minus 2 equals 4. Let's add 2 to both sides. To cancel out that 2, and r will equal 6. So remember that part where we saved a step. When it was negative 3 times that whole quantity, do the opposite and divide both sides by the negative 3, and that simplifies things up real quick. Substitute in, get ready to cross multiply, and solve. Number 13, substitute the values in and solve. Use the slope formula. M is 0 equals y2 is r minus y1 is negative 5, just substituting the numbers in, all over x2 is 6 minus x1 is 7. Let's simplify that a little bit. R minus negative 5 is really r plus 5, and 6 minus 7 is negative 1. Now let's get a fraction on the left. Remember, any integer can be put over 1 to get a fraction, and cross multiply. 1 times r plus 5 equals 0 times negative 1. So do 1 times r plus 5, remember put the r plus 5 in parentheses, equals 0 times negative 1. 1 times r plus 5 is just r plus 5, and 0 times negative 1 is 0. That's a r plus 5, so do the opposite and subtract 5 from each side. 5 minus 5 is 0, it cancels on the left, leaving a r equals 0 minus 5 is negative 5. And if you notice, this line has a slope of 0, so it's a horizontal line. And this happens when the y values are all the same. R was a y value at negative 5, and notice, the first point also had a y value of negative 5. So this is a horizontal line through negative 5. For number 14, let's substitute in and find r. M is 3/4 equals y2 is 1 minus y1 is 4 all over x2 is 7 minus x1 is r. That's the second y minus the first y over the second x minus the first x. Simplify a little bit. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. Then cross multiply. 3 times 7 minus r equals 4 times negative 3. Make sure you put 7 minus r in parentheses, because it's 3 times that whole thing. And don't do the distributive property. We're going to save a step there. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. And then remember, since it's 3 times that whole chunk where the r is, do the opposite and divide both sides by that 3. 3 divided by 3 on the left is 1. And 1 times all that is just 7 minus r, because the 3's cancel. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Now let's get rid of that 7 on the left That's a positive there, so let's subtract it from both sides. That leaves negative r on the left, and on the right, negative 4 minus 7 is negative 11. Remember, we don't want negative r, we want r. So multiply both sides by negative 1, and that changes the signs. R equals 11. Remember, on that last step, if your variable is the negative, then change all the signs, and that'll make it a positive. Substitute in, cross multiply, and solve. Number 15. Let's substitute the values in and then solve. M is 6 equals y2 is 9, that's the second y, minus y1 is 5, that's the first y, all over x2 is r, that's the second x, minus x1 is 7, that's the first x. Simplify that. 9 minus 5 is a 4. And then so we can cross multiply, let's put the 6 over 1. And it'll be 6 times r minus 7 equals 1 times 4. Remember to put the r minus 7 in parentheses. And thinking ahead here, 1 times 4 is 4, and that's not divisible by 6. So let's go ahead and do the distributive property here. On the left, 6 times r is 6r, minus 6 times 7 is 42. And on the right, 1 times 4 is 4. Now remember, I did that because I know that 4 is not divisible by 6, so this will keep me from having fractions till the very end. And remember, you can distribute every time if you want. We were just saving a step by doing that before. Now I'm just left with a two-step equation. Remember, add or subtract first. So let's get rid of the 42. It's being subtracted, so do the opposite and add it to both sides. Negative 42 plus 42 cancels on the left, leaving 6r. And 4 plus 42 is 46. Finally, divide both sides by 6. And r equals, you can simplify that. Those are both divisible by 2, making it 23/3. So sometimes r is a fraction, and that's fine. Whatever it is fine. It could be a fraction, it could be positive or negative, it could be 0. Just remember, you find it by substituting all the values in, setting up for cross multiplication, and then finish solving for r. So remember to use the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. That's the second y minus the first y over the second x minus the first x. In each of these, all we're doing is substituting in the values we know and solving for what we don't. Most of the time, you'll be solving for the slope. But sometimes you'll be given one of the x or y coordinates as a r, and you'll have to solve for that. So substitute in, solve it, finish it up.